Hey, welcome back to the channel. In today's video, I'm going to be making the world's largest Lidbot. It's part of my world record series. In part 1, I made the world's smallest Lidbot. This guy is made from just one pen lid, so make sure you go back and check that out. Alright, this was a heck of a build and a heck of a paint job, so let's get into it. Hit the intro. Got some white bad audio in the house. Let me know in the comments if you like background music in these videos. So here we're just showing off some stuff from the build. Got some lids, a Bluetooth speaker, the tops off those cans of air, a giant marker, lids from vitamin bottles, and the biggest ink cartridges I ever saw. Going to be keeping track of how much glue and how many lids I use in this build. Any guesses? Believe me, it's a lot. So I start by sticking these guys together. Starting off with the biggest lid I could find, stuck that to some foam core board just to beef it up a bit. When gluing bits like this together, I like to put the baking powder on the inside and just kind of move it around so it hits all the edges. If I put it around the outside, it's going to be really rough and it's going to be hard to clean that up. I'm going to have to sand it, and that's not great. Right here there's still a bunch of glue sticking out, so I'm wiping that down. Just another thing I won't have to clean up later. Easier when it's wet. Here's some giant zip ties. I cut off the pointy bit and the square bits at the end. I'll be using those pointy bits later. Just using these to cover up the foam core so they don't look all rough. Then using some plastic card to hide some of the grippy parts on these lids. The tricky thing about building with lids is it's hard to make it so they don't look like lids. Am I saying lids enough? Yeah, you gotta hide that stuff. Here's the first mistake of the build. Baking powder does help the glue set up harder and faster, but you actually have to have the bits stuck together. This was just stuck to the baking powder and it fell off 20 minutes later. I prep the glue areas of most of my pieces the same way with some 80 grit sandpaper and then chop it up to create more surface area for the glue. Smooth pieces of plastic do not like to stick together. You gotta help it along. I've found when using plastic card in scratch building, it's a good idea to cut the pieces a little larger than you need them and then sand them flush after they're glued. That works really nicely. Nice smooth transition. These are the back wheels of the bot, and I knew they were going to fade into the background, so I'm just giving them some texture. These are the little gems you can buy to decorate project boards at the dollar store, or you can use them to kind of fancy up your junk you sell on your Etsy shop to sell them for way more money than they're worth. Using the same bit of kit I used on my Headhunter monster build to make one of the heads. It's just half of a plastic party favor yo-yo. Picked up a big pack of them for cheap. It's a good bit of kit. Nice size, nice shape. Here's that Bluetooth speaker. I just gutted it. I'm using it for the face on the bot. This was definitely the trickiest part. That piece is really heavy, and it created a lot of gaps all the way around it. It's definitely the most eye-catching feature of the build though. Of course, you know those are plastic Easter eggs I'll be using for the eyes. This was a very brittle plastic and it was real tricky to remove all the excess plastic. Ended up using 4 or 5 of those things before I got it right. I figured the Bluetooth speaker was a bit too heavy to trust to super glue, so here I'm using a 2-part epoxy I picked up cheap at the discount tool store. I highly recommend it. Look for this stuff. It works great. It doesn't exactly set up right away though. Ended up leaving it overnight and spent the rest of my build time that day sorting bits for my next build. More about that later. These are the tops of those cans of compressed air. You know the ones, they cost $10. You spray them 4 times and they're empty. And then here's the lids off of the really good super glue, because it really makes any kind of difference. Dude, it doesn't. Buy the cheap stuff. It works just as well. I knew I wanted a patented Terrains by Air and Go Fast stripe on the top of this guy, so I needed a nice smooth piece to paint on. That turned out to be the best and the worst part of that paint job. So here's a fun bit. That's the original HDMI cable from my original Xbox 360. Me and my brother played a lot of Halo 2 and Halo 3 running through that cable. I wrapped this marker body in sandpaper and then basically used it to saw out the section that I gotta glue it to. That worked pretty awesome. This piece is going to support the back axle, but it felt kind of weak to me and it had that gap. So I covered it in Milliput, kind of smushed it into the holes and then wrapped it around, smoothed it out. Looked awesome, worked great. These are going to be the back axle, just cutting them to size and sticking them together. It was around this time I realized how front heavy this guy was and decided to see if I can weight it down in the back a bit. I just stuffed it full of screws from that old Xbox I took apart. Okay, the structural stuff is done. Now time for greebles. Most of this came from a cheap model kit I bought. It was called the VTech. Not sure where I got the crown, but the world's largest Lidbot needs a crown for show. These are the ends of those zip ties I cut up earlier. And in my opinion, you can't have a scratch build without a plastic spoon. There's the handle. And he is done. Time to paint. So I hit it with the black primer and realized it would be impossible to paint that, at least for me, at least right now. I'm still getting better, so I hit it with some white just to give it some contrast so I can see everything, and then painted the body with a metallic green. I used almost exclusively metallic paints in this paint job, and they are a nightmare. You just have to do coat after coat after coat. So I thought I'd save you having to watch all that. I tried out various undercoats to help move things along to mixed success. Some of it worked great, some of it didn't help at all. Right there's the metallic yellow, followed by some copper. The copper was 2 coats, but the yellow was 10, so you never know. One thing I learned during this paint job is if you mix really cheap paint with really good paint, it does uplift the cheap paint. That's a real bad green with a really good white. Mixed together, you can see how well that covers. I hit all the greebles with the silver mixed with the metallic black. Also hit some of the details. So here we go with the hardest part of the paint job, the gold stripe, as well as the gold down the middle. I undercoated a lot of it with that yellow mixed with white, but gosh, that gold, man, I think on top here, that was 15 coats. It was paint, blow dry, paint, blow dry, paint, blow dry for like 2 hours. You can't argue with the results though. It came out so nice. Went with just complementary colors for the back part of the build. More of the metallic purple and the metallic green. That part went a lot faster with the stuff I learned about undercoating. All this undercoating is a purple mixed with white. I had leftover, so I went ahead and did the wheels, even though those are going to get painted blue. I was almost done for the day, so I just hit the blue real quick and let it sit for a week, and after staring at it all week, I decided I hated it and needed to do something else. So I'm mixing metallic blue and black. It came out too dark, so I added some white, and what I came up with was one of my favorite colors ever. I imagine I'll be using this on a lot of builds. Ended up taking a bit of a break from painting. I was a little burned out and decided I needed a paintbrush caddy. So I made one. Like it says on my channel, why buy new when you can build it from scratch? And there it is. It came out awesome, and this will be my next video, so please subscribe so you can check that one out. Just doing the final details. Boy, we are almost done. At some point I knocked the dude's crown off, so I just waited till the end to put that back on. So what do we have here? 16 lids, 11 things of glue. Amazing. Also used that 2-part epoxy and a little bit of Elmer's glue. And speaking of the end, that is it. Man, it felt good to finish this guy off. Basically took me a month to build him, just working on him on the weekends, a couple weeks for the paint job. I couldn't be happier. So yeah, thank you so much for watching all the way to the end. I'm so proud of this build, and man did I learn a lot. There'll be links and descriptions to everyone I mentioned, like Trains by Aaron. I think you saw Andy Mecha on there. Please subscribe and like the video if you don't mind. It helps out the channel a lot. We'll see you in the next one.